Imagine being humiliated in public by someone who judged you based on your appearance, not knowing that you actually own the place. That's exactly what happened when an arrogant waitress tried to kick out a customer she thought was unworthy of a fancy restaurant. But what happened next was a true lesson in humility and respect that no one in that room has ever forgotten. And believe me, this story will make you rethink what it really means to be classy. At one of New York's most renowned restaurants, the city's elite enjoyed a sophisticated evening. Wall Street executives discussed investments. Digital influencers were looking for the perfect shot for their social networks, and waiters moved quickly between tables, ensuring that every detail was impeccable. In the midst of this setting of luxury and exclusivity, a man sitting alone enjoyed his whiskey. Nothing about him attracted attention. A simple polo shirt, cotton pants, a calm look. He looked out of place there, and for some, it seemed wrong that he was there. The waitress Vanessa, newly hired and determined to impress her superiors, noticed his presence and immediately judged him. The restaurant only served a sophisticated clientele, and in her eyes, that man did not fit the mold. And I have to say, I've seen this kind of situation happen so many times. The way some people treat others based solely on appearance makes me a little sick, as if a branded outfit or accessory were a testament to human value. Vanessa hesitated for a moment, but then made a decision. She walked to his table, straightened her apron, and, with a forced smile, did what many people in this world love to do: underestimate someone. "Sir, I notice you've been here for a while with just a whiskey. Perhaps you'd feel more comfortable at the bar?" The man slowly looked up. The serenity in his eyes was almost frightening, the kind that makes you think twice before continuing to talk nonsense. "I'm fine here, thank you." But Vanessa insisted. "Our menu is very exclusive, and the prices are high." At this point, I was already rolling my eyes. Who did this waitress think she was to judge someone like that? It's amazing how some people think they can measure someone's worth by what they see on the outside. The surrounding customers began to pay attention, sensing the awkwardness in the air. The young busboy, Lucas, who was observing the scene from afar, became uneasy. He recognized the man. I knew who he was, but he hesitated to intervene. Meanwhile, Vanessa continued, increasingly convinced that she had the right to kick him out of there. "I just want to make sure you're aware of our standard." And then came the fatal error. We cannot allow anyone to occupy a space that does not belong to them. Ready? There it was. The rotten mentality that destroys the true meaning of class and hospitality. That idea that money defines who deserves respect and who doesn't. The man slowly placed a glass on the table and picked up his cell phone. "Jerry, can you bring the restaurant's ownership documents?" "Yes, now." Total silence. And at that moment, I swear I wanted to see her face. The expression of panic, of immediate regret. It must have been priceless. Minutes later, a man entered the restaurant with a leather briefcase and handed it to the customer. He calmly opened the papers and looked directly at Vanessa. "I've been here every Friday for the last 6 months. I always sit at this table, order the same whiskey, and watch. Do you know why?" She could barely breathe. "Because 50 years ago, when I first came to this restaurant, I was nobody, but the owner treated me as if I were the most important person in the world. And that's the difference between those who really have class and those who only pretend to." He closed the documents and continued. "That's why, when this restaurant came up for sale, I bought it, not for luxury, not for status, but to preserve something that seems to be disappearing. Respect. Man, what a class. What a perfect answer." He then pointed at Lucas. "This young man here, he understood what you didn't understand. He recognized something greater than appearances. And, as if the situation wasn't humiliating enough, the final blow came. I could fire you now, but that wouldn't teach anything. So I'm going to give you a choice. You can leave and look for another job where appearance matters more than character. Or you can stay and learn what it really means to work in hospitality." Vanessa, who previously exuded arrogance, was now barely able to speak. I want to stay. I want to learn. And this is where a lot of people go wrong. It's not just about punishment. It's about evolution. Error teaches, but only if the person is willing to learn. The man smiled slightly. "Good choice. Marcos, the manager, looked at Lucas and, in an unexpected twist, said, "Starting today, you start training as a waiter." The young man's eyes widened. "Serious?" "Yes, because we need more people who understand what really matters." And little by little, customers started to applaud, not for a famous actor, not for a billionaire businessman, but for a life lesson that everyone there needed to hear. That night, as the restaurant returned to normal, Clint Eastwood. Simple took another sip of his whiskey, knowing that he had left something much more valuable than money in that place: respect. But the story didn't end there. In the days that followed, something interesting happened. Vanessa, the waitress who had judged and humiliated her own boss without even knowing it, found herself in a position she never imagined, being trained by Lucas, the busboy who, until that moment, she hadn't even looked into the eyes of. And honestly, I wanted to believe that this experience would make her a better person. Because let's face it, if such public humiliation doesn't teach humility, nothing else does. Lucas, on the other hand, took his new position seriously. He didn't mock Vanessa. He didn't throw the mistake he made in her face. No, he did something that only really great people do. He taught without arrogance, without resentment. And I think that's incredible. The transition was difficult for Vanessa. At first, she tried to maintain her pose, as if she were still superior to him. But over time, she was forced to face reality. There, in the restaurant, among the employees, among the customers, no one looked at her the same way anymore. Because when you build your identity on arrogance, and that arrogance crumbles, what's left? Time passed, and little by little, Vanessa began to listen, paying attention. She realized that Lucas, that boy she treated as invisible, understood much more about respect and hospitality than she had ever understood. And here comes an interesting thing. Sometimes, the greatest lesson that life can give you comes not from someone you admire, but from someone you underestimated. The following Friday, Clint Eastwood returned to the restaurant. He sat at the same table, ordered the same whiskey. This time, when Vanessa saw him, she took a deep breath. Something inside her had changed. She walked to the table, without the arrogance from last week, without the condescending look. This time there was something new: respect. "Good evening, sir. Your usual whiskey?" Clint looked up, that look that so many people would recognize from the movies, but which, there, carried a much deeper meaning. "Yes, please." She served the drink carefully, without rushing, without nervousness, but with genuine humility. And in that moment, speechless, Clint knew the lesson had been learned. And that's what fascinates me. How life has a way of putting people in their place. You can have degrees, followers, money, status. But if you don't know how to treat people with dignity, at some point, reality will put you in your place. Ultimately, Vanessa learned the hard way that respect can't be bought, it can't be dressed, it can't be faked. Respect is built. And Lucas, well, he kept growing. He became a waiter, then a supervisor, and one day, who knows, maybe manager of that same restaurant. And what about Clint Eastwood? He kept coming back every Friday, sitting at the same table, drinking the same whiskey, watching. Because deep down, he knew that his presence there wasn't just about food or drink. It was about ensuring that people never forgot the true meaning of the word class. Weeks passed, and the change in the restaurant was evident. Vanessa, previously haughty and arrogant, now walked with more humility. She still carried remnants of her old attitude. After all, no one changes from one day to the next, but something about her was different. She listened more, spoke less, and, above all, observed. And you want to know? That was already a big victory. Because, deep down, true learning begins when we stop thinking we know everything. Lucas, in turn, not only trained Vanessa, but also gained more space. Customers began to notice the attentive and respectful way in which he treated everyone, regardless of who they were. And it was only a matter of time before managers realized he was more than just a busboy. He was a role model. But the moment that really sealed this story happened a few Fridays later. Clint Eastwood entered the restaurant, as he did religiously, occupying his discreet corner. The noise of cutlery and conversations filled the sophisticated environment. But this time, something different happened. Vanessa approached their table, but instead of simply taking the order, she did something no one expected. "Good evening, Mr. Eastwood. Your usual whiskey?" Clint looked up and saw something in Vanessa that hadn't existed before: sincerity. "Yes, please." She poured the drink with steady hands. But before leaving, she hesitated. He took a deep breath and then said, quietly, just for him to hear, "Thank you for the lesson." And there, without grandiose speeches, without audiences, without spotlights, something rare happened, a genuine apology. And I think that's incredible, because in today's world, everyone wants to look right all the time. Few people have the courage to admit they made a mistake. But when does someone have that courage? This deserves respect. Clint gave a slight smile, that same discreet smile that marked so many iconic characters. He raised his glass in a small toast and simply said, "I'm glad you learned." And that's it. I didn't need anything else. That night was a milestone, not just for Vanessa, but for everyone in the restaurant. Miguel, or rather Lucas, was no longer just a helper. He was now seen as someone with real potential. And Vanessa, well, she understood that the world doesn't revolve around who has the most expensive watch or the most sophisticated clothes. At the end of the day, what really matters is how we treat people. And honestly, I think this is one of the greatest lessons anyone can learn in life. Because money buys many things, but it will never buy character. The following Friday, Clint returned. Like always, he sat in the same place, ordered the same whiskey. But this time, it wasn't just a customer reviewing a restaurant. He was a symbol, a living reminder that class and respect never go out of style. In the weeks that followed, Le Chateau Noir, now located in the heart of San Francisco, continued to operate as usual, but there was a new energy in the air. The employees seemed more attentive. The customers noticed more authentic service. And, in a way, everyone there had learned a lesson that went beyond restaurant service. And you know what I find most incredible? It's just that this all happened without shouting, without revenge, without arrogance. Clint Eastwood could have simply fired Vanessa on the spot. After all, he was the owner, but he chose to teach. And that, to me, is a true demonstration of power. Because a true leader doesn't impose fear, he inspires respect. Vanessa, in turn, not only changed her stance, but began to take a real interest in the world of hospitality. Now, she asked customers about their preferences without judging them. He learned to differentiate class from snobbery. And the most surprising thing? He started helping Lucas with the newbies. Lucas, in fact, became a true star of the restaurant, not because he wanted to be, but because his work spoke for itself. He didn't need an Instagram follower to be respected. His respect came from his dedication, his patience, and above all, his character. And then, one special night, something unexpected happened. It was a busy Friday as always. The restaurant was packed, and among the evening's customers, a group of investors were talking loudly about new projects in the city. Among them, a man Vanessa recognized immediately, Richard Calloway, one of the greatest entrepreneurs in the hospitality sector. She got nervous. After all, months ago, she would have done anything to impress someone like him, probably in completely the wrong way. But now, something inside her had changed. So instead of trying to look more than she was, she just followed her training. He served the table with respect, patience, and professionalism. He didn't exaggerate with praise. He didn't try to appear superior. He just did what needed to be done to the best of his ability. And that's when it happened. At the end of dinner, Calloway called her over. "Have you worked in hotels before?" he asked, analyzing her curiously. Vanessa swallowed. "No, sir. I'm learning right here." The businessman smiled. "Well, I'm hiring managers for a new project, and I like people who learn from their own mistakes. If you ever want to expand your experience, look for me." And there it was. What could have been the worst moment of his career months ago ended up becoming the reason for his most unexpected opportunity. And you want to know? This made me think about how often we close ourselves off from opportunities out of pure pride. Sometimes all we need to do is admit we made a mistake, learn and move on. That day, Vanessa realized that humility and growth go together. Clint, as always, watched everything from afar, sipping his whiskey with that enigmatic half-smile. He didn't need to say anything. The lesson had already been taught. And I think that, in the end, this is the best way to teach someone, not with empty words, but with examples that last a lifetime. Because respect, after all, is not something that is required. It's something that can be achieved. In the weeks that followed, Le Chateau Noir continued to operate with new energy. Vanessa showed more and more interest in her work, and Lucas, always patient, helped her with care techniques. The restaurant hadn't just become a better place to work. It had become a symbol of something bigger: respect, humility, and genuine service. And do you know what impresses me most about all this? How a simple act of arrogance could have ruined a career. But thanks to Clint Eastwood's handling of the situation, it ended up becoming a turning point for Vanessa. This makes me wonder, how many times do we let our egos stop us from growing? Then, on a random Friday, something unexpected happened. Clint arrived, as always, taking his table in the corner. But this time, something was different. Vanessa approached with a posture that was unthinkable just a few months ago. Without hesitation, he poured his favorite whiskey, and before leaving, he took a deep breath and said, "Mr. Eastwood, I never thank you for the second chance." Clint, always economical with words, just raised his eyebrow and gave a half-smile. "You didn't need a second chance. Vanessa, I needed a first understanding. Now it does." And that was it. Simple, direct, but powerful. The restaurant continued its night. Orders continued to arrive, and Vanessa returned to work. But something there stood out. A cycle had closed. And I keep thinking, how would the world be different if more people acted like Clint Eastwood? If, instead of humiliating or dismissing someone at the first mistake, we try to teach? If, instead of judging someone by their appearance, we sought to understand their real value? This story isn't just about a restaurant or an arrogant waitress who learned a lesson. It's about how true greatness lies in humility, about how respect is something that is built, not imposed, and, in the end, about how a man in a simple polo shirt and a glass of whiskey managed to turn any night at Le Chateau Noir into one of the most important lessons that restaurant has ever seen. If you like this story and believe that respect and humility make a difference, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more content like this. Leave your like and comment below. Have you ever been through a similar situation? How did you deal with that? Let's talk in the comments. See you in the next video.